A very warm good afternoon to all of you. I'm Sakshi, welcoming you all on behalf of eMobility Plus and First View Media Group to our webinar on navigating India's EV investment and finance landscape. Before we dive into the session, let me give you a quick overview of what to expect from today's webinar. As we know, in today's era of evolving technology and dynamic transportation needs, India's EV sector is evolving at an unprecedented pace, presenting exciting opportunities for investors and financiers. Our panel of experts will shed light on the following key takeaways: the dynamic EV investment landscape, the complexities of government policies and incentives, strategies to mitigate investment risks, explore the significance of sustainable finance, discover financing options for various EV segments, gain insights into the future of India's EV ecosystem. Post this, we will have a Q&A session where you can ask in your questions that you have for our speakers. I would also like to make a small announcement here that the attendees can post their questions in the Q&A box, and our speakers will take up those once the discussion concludes. Before we start today's session, I would also like to take this opportunity and invite you all to our upcoming event, EV Finance and Investment Summit 2024, which is going to take place on 19 January in New Delhi. Join us and stay ahead in the world of EV finance and investment. I will request my team to play a video for the same. Thank you, team, for playing that video. Now it's time to dive into the discussion on navigating India's EV investment and finance landscape. And for this, allow me to introduce our esteemed panel for today. We have Mr. Pankaj Gupta from Muffin Green Finance, Mr. Varun Goenka from Charge Up, Mr. Ueda from Terra Motors Corporation, Mr. Parekh from the Yes Bank, Mr. Gopal from International Finance Cooperation. Mr. Divan, who's the Senior Vice President and Group Head Corporate Ratings from ICRA, will be moderating the session. I welcome all our esteemed panelists on the screen. Over to you, Mr. Divan.
Thank you, Sakshi, for the kind introduction. Good afternoon, everyone who are joining on this webinar today, and a very warm welcome to all of you on this webinar, which aims to focus on navigating India's EV investment and finance landscapes. To be honest with you, I think this is one of the most important topics within the overall EV ecosystem, which hasn't been talked about much so far. While we keep on hearing from various agencies and other investment authorities about various aspects of the electric vehicle ecosystem panning out in India, but I think one of the most focused areas, which is, how do you fund the entire EV ecosystem, right from OEMs to startups to charging companies, as well as the retail financing, which plays a very important role in the automobile sector in India. As we all know that close to about 85 to 90% of all vehicles that are purchased in India depend upon external financing. So to that extent, I congratulate eMobility Plus for picking up a very pertinent topic, which is to talk about the investment and finance landscape in India. Now, without further delay, and also to give opportunity to everyone who's joining this webinar to ask questions at the end of this panel discussion, let me start this discussion by first of all extending a warm welcome to all the panel members here, and thanking them for taking out time from their busy schedule today. I would like to maybe start with Mr. Mr. Karthik Gopal, who represents IFC here, to give his perspective of how the global investment landscape as far as electric vehicle industry is panning out is looking at, and what are some of the learnings that we can imbibe in India, looking at some of the developed markets like US or even China for that matter.
First of all, thank you so much for having me here. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. Very quickly, my name is Karthik Gopal. I serve as the industry specialist for electric vehicles at IFC, which is a part of the World Bank. Been with the EV industry for about 13 years now, and prior to that, another 13 years in the semiconductor industry. Thank you so much, Shamsher, for the question. So it's a very interesting dynamic between what's happening in developed versus developing markets, and I would put China as a third space, which has been a lead, which has sort of taken lead in the electric vehicle industry, but lots of that has come from an extremely intense subsidy regime, industrial policy that has supported the growth of the entire value chain in China. Outside of that, I think we clearly see that the financing landscape for EVs is very different between developed and developing markets, primarily stemming from from two perspectives. One is the fact that the focus in the last decade for electric vehicle adoption has been in personal passenger cars in the developed world. So the focus was pretty much about building cars for individual users, and therefore the kind of products that were coming in from very established players, a few startups, in the sense, of course, Tesla was a startup 15 years back, but so most of them have come in. A lot of it has also come in from Nissan, from other established players, and they're used a literally as less aggressively than commercial vehicles are. In India and other developing markets, the focus of electric adoption has been on two and three wheelers as of now, and buses, and the other segments are starting to pick up right now. So the dynamics of financing a commercial vehicle for a commercial use case and funding a personal vehicle are quite different. So the initial hesitation from all financiers around how will the vehicles perform, how will the batteries last, all of those questions were equally present on both sides of this economic divide. But in the personal use case, given the fact that batteries last a lot longer than the tenor of financing, it's been an easier ride. And leasing is a very well established model in many developed markets, so that's they have somehow figured out ways to take off some of the risks associated with residual value and all those aspects. Whereas in our markets, clearly the use cases are far more aggressive. So the concerns around the asset quality, battery life, also coupled with the fact that in the commercial vehicle financing space, you need to look at the off-taker bankability, you need to look at the bankability of who's going to use it. So a lot of different concerns. So I think there is a lot more um, increase in the capability for financing that is needed in our markets, and that's kind of the difference that we are seeing. So I'll pause here and be happy to discuss further as we progress. Over to you, please. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks for putting in a perspective for us of what has really happened in the developed markets versus China, as you said, has been largely driven by government support coming in form of subsidies for the creating the entire ecosystem in that sense. Let me address this to Varun now. Varun, you work with, or rather, you're one of the co-founders for ChargeUp. As a startup, if I can, ask you that, what has been your journey and experience in raising funding for a segment which is, going to pan out over the next 5 to 10 years and even beyond. So when you meet investors, you meet lenders, what kind of challenges that you face and how do you address them? Number one, and number two, and again, in your experience, how have things worked out in some of the other markets?
So thanks, Shamsher, for asking this, and happy to be in this panel. Uh, we started in 2018, 2019, when EV were not so much hot topic that point of time. So we have seen a phase from that frame to right now. Uh, See, typically, if you look at the EV space through startup perspective, today in the top five two-wheeler OEMs, there are startups like Ola, Ather, Okinawa. They're all startups we are talking about, not the traditional ones. Now, what differentiates a startup from a traditional player is their speed of going, delivering it faster and being more asset light into the industry. That's how they are able to think through and construct the whole business model, which eventually became much more attractive for the VC world. uh, the whole noise around EV started if we look at 2021 onwards, and after our honorable Prime Minister, Finance Minister announced a policy around battery swapping. That's where a major eyeball started looking at the EV sector from the VC side. So it has been a tough journey, frankly. Eventually, now definitely there's a lot of tailwind in last 2 years towards EV sector from a VC world. But the sector is divided in vehicle manufacturers, infra companies, tech, SaaS uh, companies, and even I would say financing and leasing companies in this space. Uh, the struggle is around how to make it a profitable company. The VC world looks at a horizon of 4 to 5 years, whereas an EV startup needs a patient capital for a longer period in this. So that's where the mismatch is all about, And uh, now in EV being blessed with all this tailwind, so there are strategic funds, there are climate tech funds, all looking at this sector. So that all depends how from the startup lens, how we construct the business, the fundamentals of the business. So especially in automobile sector, it cannot work like a tech startup. Yeah, the quality checks, the certain processes has to be in place when you're doing this.
Okay, I think you mentioned a very important point that the startup community, especially in the electric vehicle space, requires long-term patient capital. And
Correct.
typically, venture capitalists or private equity firms will have constraints from their portfolio allocation point of view that the investment should start generating returns 4 or 5 years down the line.
Right.
But in a market like India, which is still, I would say gearing up towards EV revolution in a slow and steady manner, it takes time for results to really show up. So that's a very important point, and I think that is where I think the disconnect is. And perhaps from this webinar, we'll try to seek solutions, innovative solutions as to how that can be kind of addressed.
Sure.
Mr. Oyoda, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. If I can come to you now, I remember meeting one of the personnel from your organization close to about 7 to 8 years back in India.
Okay.
I think
Right.
a gentleman had come to meet us and understand the entire three-wheeler market. And at
Yep.
that point in time, he was very interested to know what our views were on the electric three-wheeler segment. And frankly, nobody was talking about electric at that point in time, especially at least in the three-wheeler segment. And today we are at a position where that is one segment which is leading electric vehicle penetration in a very handsome way in India, apart from the two-wheeler industry. So, just want to understand that how has been your experience of operating in India? What kind of challenges that you see,
Mm.
despite the fact that this is a very large market globally for electric three-wheelers, and as Varun also pointed out, there are tailwinds now which are
Mm.
supporting the industry. So, your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So first of all, thank you very much for having me here, and it's great. It's honor to be here as one of the panelists. And my name is Ueda from Japan, and I'm the CEO of Teramutas Corporation. And basically, we are now doing the three business in EV sectors, three vertical. One is the like Mr. Sharma mentioned, three wheeler segment, and second is the EV financing. For we are having the RBI license, given the EV finance for our vehicle. Third is the infrastructure. We are start to provide the IV infrastructure as well.
Since we are here in 2014, Mr. Bolon also mentioned frankly, it was a tough journey. However, now is the time for us to enjoy the market. And then, frankly, I'm really enjoying right now with the Indian as a market, with the people, as well as the EV industry in this country. And what I see from my experience here is, see, in the beginning of the EV era in India, it was like, three-wheeler was going so first. I think that one of the reason is it's standalone industry. In a sense, it's established without the FAME subsidy. So that is the one of the big key success factors for three-wheeler market. These days, the government is pushing a lot of FAME subsidy and putting the money in there. But what if, and even if they are not extending in next year, what will happen? So, or some dependency is always there for two wheelers and then L5 categories and all. So that's why we started our business from L3, which is standalone and keep growing without any subsidy. However, you know, uh, make it more high spec vehicle, and then try to be there for replacement of the gas IEC engine is also required. So here a lot of cooperation discussion required between the private and government. However, though, if we can cooperate together, I think we can see the same kind of the growth in two-wheeler and then four-wheeler segment as well. And then what I feel is that this is the industry, not like the small, each separate component business. So I think providing the ecosystem as a company or as a kind of the people who are, bring up the industry in this country is very much important. So that's the reason why we are starting three verticals. Frankly speaking, people are calling us the crazy. You are spending a lot of money for three-wheeler and putting a lot of money in the market in microfinance, and then again EV infrastructure. However, I think that is one of the key strategy to success as a company by providing entire one-stop solution for the EV ecosystem.
Okay. So I just want to ask you a follow-up question. You mentioned that, at some point in time in the strategy of your company, you decided not just to focus on selling electric three-wheelers in India, but also
Yeah,
financing them and creating the entire infrastructure.
yeah.
Now, is that something which was always a part of your strategy, or you felt the need that, financing and infrastructure was the missing puzzles in India, and you had to address them yourself rather than collaborating with somebody else?
Yeah, actually that one. Because see, the people keep saying about chicken and egg story, right? But who is going to provide the chicken then? We cannot wait and then somebody is bring it to over there. So as a kind of the commitment to the EV sectors, okay, let's try to be the chicken and then try to be the leader of the entire industry. So this is kind of the idea which we bring. And then for that, of course, the dream cannot bring any capital here. So we are decided to go for the IPO also, and try to secure the fund from the public as well. So that is the where the idea come from.
Okay, great. Thank you. Mr. Gupta, if I can come to you now, uh, how has been your experience of lending to the EV ecosystem, both on the wholesale side as well as on the retail side? Because demand for money is on both sides of the spectrum. You need to fund dealers, you need to fund the stakeholders, as well as provide retail funding as well. What type of concerns do you see the most, and how are they being addressed now as the segment is moving slightly towards gaining some scale?
I want to start up with a brief background about Muffin Green. So we are an organization which started electric vehicle financing in 2016. We are one of the early birds who started EV financing. We started this under our parent company, which is Muffin Finance, which is as a license by the name of Indian Mercantile Limited, and under which we have been operating this business for last almost like 5 6 years. And that gave us a very different learning altogether. We understood, we seen the COVID, we seen the all the delinquencies and everything in the entire ecosystem. Correct. Understand what are strengths, what are the gaps, and how EV financing need to be taken care of. And on 9th March 2022, we acquired a listed entity by the name of APM Invest Limited, uh, renamed it as Muffin Green Finance. And today, as we stand and as we talk, we stand and we moved our entire EV portfolio there. At that point in time, we were at almost like a 40 CR AUM at that point in time when we moved this entire portfolio. And today, as we talk about, we stand at almost like 10x in last 18 months. We currently stand at 400 crore AUM, and that is pure EV. We believe in three things. One, fund a right asset, correct? Definitely take care of a, what is the use case that this asset being used, and whether this asset would be able to take care and generate income so that the person can take care of his livelihood and drive the and pay the EMIs also on time. We are India's biggest in terms of e-rickshaw financing. We currently hold a AUM of around close to 240 crores, which is pure e-rickshaw or a three-wheeler led, I would say. Our total out of total portfolio, we would have a total portfolio of around close to 280 crore, which would revolve around three-wheelers. Then we have a good amount of size of around close to 100 crore as a book size for even for B2B loans, which are primarily funding the ecosystem where we are funding swappable battery chargers, even various other types of funds which we are doing. But whatever we are doing it for enablement of electric vehicle mobility adaptation in India. But when we do vehicles versus battery ecosystem, or whether we do charging in infrastructure, they are very different altogether. These each product needs needs to be thought a little differently, designed differently. uh, you cannot have a charging product which could be built in for 5 years. You would have to look at a charger at what costs you are doing, the cost of redeployment, or if you today you face an issue with an asset, you can easily pull out and pull out it from road and redeploy and probably resell the asset. But in EV, the biggest challenge today that we face as an EV financer is the residual value of the vehicle. And probably, we have over a period of time figure out or probably come to alternatives for driving those resolutions for us. That how do we set that today when we work with almost like 1200 e-rickshaw dealers across country, we probably are probably would be taking a buyback clause from them that you need to help us redeploy the asset at that given point in time. So there are different things that we have over a period of time created it. We are financing everything in the ecosystem, whether it is chargers, whether it is vehicle, whether it is a swappable battery. We are looking at going into EV leasing, battery leasing also in a big time, and looking at a dedicated portfolio around it. And what we see that the way we are growing, we would should be able to touch a AUM of around close to $100 million, around 800 crore by this end of this financial year, and intend to probably maintain that ratio of around 20-25% in terms of having B2B portfolio around it. So we probably talking about close to anything around 200 crores as a portfolio for uh, at least for the B2B business, which would consist of chargers, swappable batteries. We are also looking at getting into funding the dealers. We started a L5 business in a big way. Currently, we would pick up with around close to 500 vehicles financing on a month-on-month basis, and intending to grow it to take it to 1,000 vehicles a month. We currently do around close to 3,000 to 4,000, 3,000 vehicles in terms of e-rickshaws per month, intending to pick it up to 4,500 vehicles a month. So on this, what I have seen that yes, EV financing is a big challenge, uh, but also quality of EVs assets, because most of them earlier started and initially started from uh, bringing these vehicles from China and deploying it. It always had many quality constraints, but now it manufacturing has started in India. There are a lot of things which are there. There is a service, after sales service available. So this is a some level of change which has already started in the ecosystem. I think so. Three-wheeler e-rickshaw products are have probably have matured now, and I think so. There are a set of vehicles. If you look at in terms of number of vehicles which are sold on month-on-month basis, and we do certain analysis around it, we should be able to identify the top 25 players and probably work with them. There is no issues on that. But I think so it still need to evolve in bit of two wheelers, definitely. But two wheeler also have certain good products like Jupiter, Ola, uh, Ather. There are good products which are available, but product for masses still yet to be the low speed one, which is a big chunk of market, still remain unaddressed from EV proper structured EV financing because of vehicle not being registered. So, and I see that as a challenge. I don't see that as a challenge with cars also, but what I see that as a challenge with LCVs, especially in a four wheeler. Only current stable product what it seems to be a Tata Ace. So I think so. Every product would have a life cycle coming into India and probably driving it. Every product cannot be a car like a Tata Tigor, which is day one come in and probably being able to take care of address the basic set of issues in EV financing or asset quality at day zero. So probably that's what my feel is. It is, I think so. It's a highly linked to quality of product, and it is highly linked to what is the residual value. Residual value would definitely, in somewhat, also get linked to the quality of product, and it is also dependent on how do we drive the entire ecosystem and how do we mitigate certain risks. Definitely EV is a high risk product as of right now, and we need to deal out ways and methods to probably deal with those kind of situations.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for a very elaborate perspective. I think one of the key takeaways from what you mentioned is that a lot of customization is required when you're trying to address financing solutions for the EV sector, and they're driven by a host of factors. One being the reusability of the vehicle, the asset itself, and the kind of asset that you're funding also has its own life cycle. So fair point. Thanks Pankaj for that. Karthik, if I can come to you now again. Varun mentioned a very important point that uh, some of the startups within the EV ecosystem require long-term patient capital, right? And that is a point where VC funds or private equity tend to have their constraining factors. Are you seeing some green shoots into some long-term strategic endowment funds or other climate funds looking at India seriously and helping accelerate the adoption in a faster way, and especially creating that EV infrastructure? Because today, if we speak to any potential customer for four-wheeler into EV, the biggest constraining factor for them is that we don't really have the charging infrastructure, even if the cost of vehicles were to come down in the next few years. But charging remains one of the key concern areas, and the range anxiety is something which they always look forward to.
So it's a. I would not say that there has been a windfall of patient capital coming in, but having said that, I think that the problem has been well recognized, and there are some good initiatives that are in play. So you may be aware of a recent scheme from SIDBI where they are starting to create a risk-sharing facility or a form of a partial credit guarantee mechanism for two and three-wheeler financing for EVs. Now, the World Bank has been supporting this project, and this is something that is enabling, hopefully should enable financiers to um, underwrite some of the risks that they are currently taking up, and therefore bring down the cost of financing. So that should unlock capital going into financing across the board for any of the financial institutions that want to take advantage of the facility. So I think that's a very good step that the government of India has used SIDBI to create this kind of a structure, which is then backed by a long-term patient capital. That's like an 8-year program that is the parent fund that is backing is a really long-term capital. Likewise, there are in the microfinance space that I am aware of a few microfinancial institutions who have received um, financing in funding from other institutions who are looking to do this in a more patient and long-term way. So essentially, yeah, I think there is definitely the problem is well recognized. There is clearly interest in figuring this out, and it's sort of starting to come together right now. I would not say that it's really been a glut of available financing. Thank you.
Okay, so you're saying some initial initiatives and steps have been taken to bring in that long-term patient capital
Yes,
into
yes,
the
I would say
market,
that.
and yeah, and some progress has been made. Varun, if I can come to you now, that the government has been very pragmatic, in bringing various policies and reforms
Yeah.
to support the entire EV ecosystem. It all started with the FAME one, policy, and then it was scaled up to 10,000 crores as part of FAME 2. Obviously, FAME 2 had some set of challenges in terms of its implementation with respect to certain subsidy issues and value addition norms not being followed by certain OEMs. They also followed it up with a PLI policy and advanced chemistry cell policy, etc. And within all these, policy framework, they've also been very quick to adapt and you know take interim measures also whenever required. Now going forward, what are the areas where you feel that there are still gaps that need to be addressed, and what else needs to be done essentially?
So, Shamsher, interestingly, government has played a very interesting role here. Firstly, introducing AIS 156, building the technical guardrails around the product standardization, so up to a certain level. Uh, Secondly, also, government looking at a focus where they are coming up with this scrapping policy of the vehicles to, uh, push the EV ecosystem more on this. But I'm personally not in a much support of the subsidy or a FAME policy. I think subsidy is an inefficient way to grow a sector. Uh, Today, EV industry doesn't need subsidy. It needs the sector should be included in priority sector lending, and that's the inflection point where the industry will grow on its own. Because if you look, 95% of the sales on the industry is two and three wheelers, and two and three wheelers. The first set of adopters is the commercial mobility here, and that's making absolute commercial sense for them. The problem happens with the subsidy, where a lot of OEMs start, producing the products, constructing the products for subsidy instead of for customers. So these are over-designed products for the customers, which they don't need it. So it's not a right practice. So I think the faster the subsidies fade away, it's better for the industry to grow more organically. So I think the most important step is including it into priority sector lending.
Okay, I think that's slightly a contrarian view that I'm hearing from you, because most of the EV stakeholders would talk about China as an example where subsidies continued for a fairly long period of time, and it was only at the end of last calendar year where they were kind of brought down in a staggered manner, and now the industry is on its own, and they're still accelerating despite the subsidies coming down.
Shamshir, just to add on this, I shared an article where people in China, there's a whole dump yard being developed where the EV vehicles are being dumped. People are leaving the vehicles on road. See, these are all the substandard products being developed, produced, uh, for the subsidies. So, and that's not a good thing as a whole industry if you think about it. You need to think of a long-term strategy here.
Right.
So,
I
not a big
somewhat
fan of.
agree what Varun said, because today when we face a challenge, let's say in Delhi we fund an e-rickshaw,
Right.
guy brings in a 40 to 50,000 as a down payment. He gets a subsidy of 35,000 rupees or 40,000 rupees in next 30 days. Correct. His skin in the game is over.
Absolutely.
Mm.
and we are funding actually what is the need value beyond a need value.
Yeah.
Right.
And if the subsidies are increasing somewhat because uh, everybody at all OEM levels, people are aware about that there will be pilferages in certain way where the subsidies are being currently designed.
Yeah.
So if we talk about a three-wheeler segment, subsidies are being designed on full, probably process documentation done by at a customer level. And if let's say that Aadhaar card, which is linked, has taken a prior subsidy already, and he has taken a second vehicle, he would
Yeah.
not get subsidy.
Correct.
And because of which, when people are probably doing the pricing of the product, they have to inflate it.
Yeah.
It's not their issue, but it is an actual issue which everybody is currently facing. And I think so for EVs, the commercial adaptation is also totally agreeing being happening just because of the way or whatever the beautiful the economics is. Today, in a vehicle, in an ICE vehicle, there are a lot of moving parts. The maintenance goes down by 75%.
Yeah.
The cost of running goes down by 75 to 80% if you're doing a home charging. And home charging are good enough to for probably running three-wheelers, or probably for four-wheelers in India if you're doing up to 200 kilometers also.
Yeah.
Correct. But the whole thought is that cities like Delhi do not have a good parking infrastructure available with people. People are looking at swapping and other solutions. So that's why the entire ecosystem has to evolve for probably doing all this stuff. And in my opinion, also subsidies are not helping it. But yes, bringing this EV financing into a priority sector lending would create a significant move in terms of EV financing.
And just adding to it, Pankaj, precisely as you and me, we have been in this industry since long. I think what today a two-wheeler, a personal mobility guy, he does around 25 to 30 kilometers a day, whereas a two-wheeler is designed for 100 kilometer plus. Now, if you reduce that battery size accordingly, the charging is faster, the price comes down, financing is efficient. Why does he need subsidy in that? And you know,
So Varun, when we talk about on those lines, on a one hand, there is a certain situation where you cannot design a vehicle. But when we are talking about a 100-kilometer vehicle, which is doing, and a person who is doing it in a commercial space, he is utilizing at 85 kilometers per day.
yeah,
He ends up consuming the entire battery in the 4-year life cycle.
correct,
Correct.
correct,
But when you talk about Aethers, Olas, and probably TVS Ionic, they've been designed to do 100 kilometers and more, but they
yep,
are designed for lasting around 10 years.
correct,
And it would, for a personal usage, would last for 10 to 15 years. Nobody is trying to understand that okay,
hmm,
battery would go for a toss in 3 years.
yeah.
People need to understand that lithium ion batteries, which are coming with this technology these days, are also have a clear linkage to in terms of number of cycles. There is a lot of education which is needed for adaptation, and I think so government should look at there as a contribution rather than subsidy.
In fact, Pankaj, just adding this 2 points on this. Firstly, what he said absolutely right. These vehicles are designed for long term. But irony of the situation here is when these are used for commercial mobility, for the food commerce, quick commerce, these vehicles are purely on lease. These are not driver-owned vehicles and are very abusively used. So they're, you can't underwrite them at least even for 24 months. The biggest problem comes there.
So
Secondly, yeah, please.
that's pretty valid point, but I feel that if you there is a certain level of wear tear and extra wear tear which happening it for 24, more than that also.
Uh-huh.
But if you do not look at their earning patterns or the total advantage that the company brings in, and you
Yes.
finance for a lesser tenure, you would again end up with defaults.
Completely. You're actually right. You are financing their revenue generating capacity through that, and which you want to accelerate actually with your financing. But but one interesting thing, what as charge up, how we have evolved just being a swapping company today to a purely asset management company. That how to, I see as a future of EVs where the ownership of vehicle and battery will be separate, And and as an asset management, you're able to increase the asset life, and what you're selling to the consumer is 100% uptime, which is more important for him, whether you say it as a range anxiety, whether you say as a a service, predictive service than a reactive service.
That's a good proposition, Varun. But I think so it would be possible in a selected product range only.
Yes, it's not
That's the
possible.
only limitation. It is not possible in all type of category of product. It can be limited to two-wheelers and e-rickshaws. I'm
Yep.
not
I think
sure.
more in commercial applications, because that is the segment where you want the vehicle to have the greatest amount of asset utilization.
Correct.
That's exactly. So let me invite Mr. Oyoda here, since he, sits on both sides of the table. On one side, he, sells electric three wheelers, and then on the other side, you even finance them. Do you agree with Pankaj's view and Varun's views that subsidies should end as soon as possible, because they always bring certain elements into the market which are not really desirable from a long-term standpoint. So, what are your thoughts on this? Do you think market like India, which is extremely value cautious, does it require a helping hand from the government for a longer period of time, or because see, eventually costs have to come down, and costs will only come down when you have decent amount of scale, right? You have localization. The batteries of cells are being manufactured in India. The battery cell cost also comes down. What are your thoughts on the subsidy element in all that?
Obviously, like Mr. Makaji already also mentioned, this is like this is like the only short term solution, because if they can do it like 5 to 10 years, we can design the market as well as the product based on the subsidy. However, it will not last like next 20 years. So in that case, the function of the subsidy is a kind of the trigger to stimulate the market. So I think maybe some of the function is already done. However, still, if we talk about the make in India as a OEM manufacturer, is still supply chain value chain is not yet growth compared with China. Yes. So in that sense, we need to push up more the product by the subsidy. In my sense, like maybe next 2 to 3 years, and then it will lead like more money coming into the EV finance, and then that will support the industry growth for sure. That is what I feel as of now.
So you feel that there is, at least another 2 to 3 years for which some kind of subsidy or incentive program is required from the government before the industry can, take things
Yes.
in their own stride.
Still,
I,
okay. Yeah, yeah. Mr. Pankaj, please.
I have a point here also. Sorry, I'm just adding on to it. Today, when you look at the EV policies, which is coming in state by state, for especially for manufacturing, everybody in every state is saying that I would give a special subsidy when a manufacturer would start manufacturing in our state.
Mm.
And it is practically impossible for a manufacturer, because I've been on the other side of the table too, correct?
Mm.
For
Mm.
me to set up a manufacturing unit across 24 states, not possible at all. And there, the local manufacturers or standardization of product is totally against the policy.
Mm.
Sorry, I've been a little vocal about it, but trust me, there are serious issues and concerns around the way policies are being designed, keeping state centricity in mind.
Yeah, that part for obviously for the central government should take the lead, because if like Mr. Pankaj said, as a manufacturer, it's impossible to choose the state based on the market, and we just make the making India over there only and get the subsidy. So it's actually not working. So as a manufacturer, I mean, as a manufacturer, we don't get anything. Only the to push up the sales at the little end. So that is actually is something we need to work out how we can use the money more in efficient way.
Yeah. Okay. Karthik, would you like to share your thoughts on, uh, from an ESG standpoint, do you think some of these investment opportunities will make more sense and bring down the cost of capital as well?
Okay, so definitely, I think the general trend towards looking at climate positive initiatives and being more benign in terms of the financing terms is a trend that's starting to pick up, and it's becoming more and more. There's a lot more interest in that space from the financial institutions' point of view. But I think the challenge has always been around the standards and the monitoring and the auditing and the reporting of all of these, and how do you kind of close the loop on that. So I think from an interest, it's a more of a, I would not rely on that to immediately transform the landscape of financing. It is a journey. It is something that there is a lot of interest in, but there are a lot of questions also being asked about making sure that the ESG commitments that entities are making are actually genuine. They can be monitored, they can be audited and reported correctly, and so on. So I think it's kind of a development of a whole subsystem, an ecosystem, and under beneath it, and that's a work in progress, I would say. I'm not saying no, but I'm just saying that it's something that's picking up steam, and it needs a lot of underlying process fundamentals to come together. Thanks.
See, at ICRA, we also work with a lot of companies which are now getting into the public-private partnership mode in terms of running the electric buses in India through the GCC route. And in our experience over the last couple of years, what we've seen is that when this entire scheme was picking up, many of the traditional bankers were not really looking forward to lending into such kind of projects which were running into 8 to 10 year kind of concession agreement. So initially it was essentially the different set of investors, like companies which are focused on lending to the power sector or renewables, etc., came up. But now, as this segment is gaining some track record, there is data available about the performance of these vehicles, how the SRTUs are actually stacking up in terms of payments and the risk mitigation strategies. So we're seeing that the bankers are also coming up and lending them, and that's kind of helping the projects to bring down their cost of capital. So I think you're fairly right in saying that it's a journey, and it's over a period of time that we'll see that multiple factors will help in bringing down the cost of capital. I'm not getting
Absolutely.
into some. Yeah, sorry, you wanted to say something.
If I just want to add one point to this, so I think this trend that now we are seeing, um, the traditional financial institutions getting into e-bus financing is, like you rightly pointed out, it's largely driven by the greater comfort and track record that has come in. It is the ESG angle has always been underlying it. It's been
Yes.
sort of, yeah, we would love to do this, but the core fundamentals of bankability have to be present. And I think those core fundamentals of bankability are starting to become visible. And then the so what I'm saying is that ESG cannot be the sole and primary driver of financing. The fundamentals of bankability for any project still need to be true. It can just complement that. So that's the transition that we are seeing.
Yeah. Pankaj, if I can come to you now, like, it looks like that your focus is entirely towards retail financing, right? But on the other side, you also have to raise funds for your, from the ecosystem. What kind of concerns or observations come from your own lenders?
So today, when we go to our lenders today, probably few of them say that we do not have an EV financing policy at all. That's a few of the banks that we go to in India currently. Second, when we talk about on the ESG factor, we probably comply to almost 8 SDG goals, and we have been very recently been rated as triple B, double B, B plus in terms of SDG rating, which has been done by Agent for Impact. We are B positive on that, and we are B positive in the first time rating because of all our ratings that we are doing or whatever work that we are doing, especially in the e-rickshaw business. So we are probably doing business with people who are new to credit. Our 80% of portfolio is something which is new to credit, and we touch upon almost 7 8 SDGs. Now, because of this, there's a lot of social impact which does, and these people have issues on probably doing banking behaviorals and multiple other things. Sorry, I'm not keeping well. So the main issue that which we face as a financer when we go to people, because they probably, there is a 25% of a portfolio which would give us EMIs on time and in cash, and there is a lot of cash involvement, which is, if a 25% of the portfolio is cash collection, it's a big challenge for us. And that's the one biggest question that we come with our lenders also: why don't you look at digitalizing it? Secondly, people probably ask that you're funding startups, you're funding ecosystem, how do you probably segregate, how would you mitigate a risk in terms of this? Normally, when we fund chargers, we fund only the assets. We do not fund, we fund chargers, we do not fund the infrastructure there. Correct. So that's a mitigation that we have adopted. But when we talk about a bulk lending of a non-asset based versus an asset based, there is a huge difference. Correct. And that's is something that we are trying to explain it to our lenders and bankers also. The challenge is always that people are not aware about EV financing. People
Yeah.
are not aware about which asset to fund, which asset not to fund.
Hmm.
And there are various clauses in and around that itself, which is a hassle and a challenge for us.
Okay.
Coincidentally, probably we are raising a lot of series of funds, but after, despite all these challenges and everything, we are still able to raise funds around it.
Okay. That's good to know. I think, in the interest of time, since we have to close the webinar at 4 o'clock, let me request Sakshi to come in here and maybe open the platform for Q&A.
Sure. Thank you so much. We have a couple of questions from the audience. I will just screen them. We have an attendee who wants to ask a question. Mr. Raghav Vahi, I will hand you the mic. Would you like to take? Would you like to deliver this question here?
Can you hear me?
Mr. Raghav, can you hear it?
Yeah. So I just wanted some feedback. I think Varun and Pankaj also mentioned on battery subscriptions, battery leasing, sort of as a consumer product, or so as kind of a forward motion from uh, like four-wheeler subscriptions, battery subscriptions for two-wheelers. Uh, Possibly there will be a flavor of swapping also in this. So I just wanted a comment from the board on this. Thank you.
Mr. Devan, who do you think is the right person to answer this question?
I think the floor is open for everybody, and anybody wants
Question
to.
is not very clear.
Yeah.
What's the exact question?
So I think so. The question is around the subscription of two wheeler. Correct? If
Yeah,
I'm
I
not
think
wrong,
it's
Ravi?
about battery as a service, or something like that. So maybe Varun,
So
if you would like to take it.
Yeah, means, that I'm just trying to figure out the question. Yeah, means I understood battery as a service and subscription service, but what exactly is the question around?
I don't think we have Mr. Wahi here, but some general comments from you. Okay, I think he's coming back.
No, I'm here. I'm here. But yeah, so the question is basically, so how can is I mean, is there some product market fit over there? Like it's kind of a segue on swapping. Battery subscriptions is a segue on swapping. Car subscriptions, four-wheeler subscriptions are done in India, right? But what about battery subscriptions. I think Varun sir just mentioned on sort of predictive sort of providing batteries as a when the need is there. Yeah. So just a comment on that side of the business. Yeah.
So, Raghav, firstly, two separate things. When we're talking about battery as a service versus mobility as a service, two separate segments. Uh, uh, Primarily, most of the companies who are financing or leasing these assets to you, they are actually not underwriting the technology or product here. They're majorly underwriting or your own balance sheet or your cash flows out here. So that has been the trajectory, and they are not to be blamed because there is not much data about the product's performance or its longevity. Now, since as ChargeUp we have created a lot of data bank and we have this whole behavior of various type of products in different terrains and different behavior patterns. So now some companies are looking forward to come and underwrite these technologies for you, but still it's too early, I think, for India. They're still underwriting your cash flows. So mobility as a service and battery energy as a service are two separate things. Where energy as a service, I would say, is more doable. Where you can control the asset's life cycle, the charging of the asset in case of swapping. Um, but when you go to mobility as a service, then it's a lot more dependent on the driver behavior as well, on his usage of the vehicle, or as I say, there's a lot of abusive usage also. So for how long you can underwrite it.
We have screened the next question. Who do you think?
We have a next question. How do you calculate the resale value of the vehicle while financing the three wheeler? Maybe Pankaj, if you can come in here and give your thoughts, because this is something I'm sure you must be doing in day in day out.
So probably when we look at our financing, normally three wheelers we look at from the cycle side of it, and majorly it is commercial product. So we look at the cycle as 3 years, and where we are financing in a B2B scenario, we look at the company extended warranties and everything. So if we look at that as a scenario, we finance for more tenure. So we resale value is always linked to utilization or the end of battery life, and it is very much linked to it because battery comprises almost like 60% of the cost of the vehicle.
But let me ask you a follow-up question here. In your experience of lending to this L3 segment, what has been your experience of the performance of the batteries there?
So L3 segment, major business is around lithium ion, not lithium ion, lead acid.
Lead acid.
Yeah, and when it comes to lead acid, it has their own set of things.
Yeah.
These vehicles are financed for 18 months only, and normally in a current state of scenario, the batteries which are running in these L5 L3 ecosystem are anything between 15 to 18 months warranty, which normally lasts for either 18 months or 24 months.
Okay. So lending to
And
L3 segment is about 18 months tenor.
majorly around 18 months still.
Okay.
The vehicle cost is around close to 1.5 lakh rupees.
Right. And I'm sure the LTV ratios also here would be quite low, right?
We are funding up to 75 to 80% of the LTV.
Okay. Great. I think we have another question. Maybe in the interest of time, we'll take this as the last one. This is from Mr. Rohit Ladda at Caspian Debt. The question is, what is the average buyback rate or repossession rate we are seeing currently in the EV financing space, and how do you see this going forward? Maybe Pankaj, if you would like to again answer this.
Uh,
Repossession rate.
so in case of a repossession of an L3, most of the cases we are able to recover the post value. And normally, what happens is that because of 18 months tenure and a vehicle life of around close to 4 to 5 years, this has become an enabler for us. And if there is a issue with the battery, we refurbish the vehicle. And normally OEMs are pretty supportive in terms of doing this, and it becomes so much uh, easy to probably repossess and resolve the uh, flat issues, specifically in L3 segment.
Okay. Any closing remarks from Karthik, Varun, or Mr. Ayoda? Anything from your side before we close this webinar?
I think from my side, though, thank you very much for having me. I think it's been a very interesting conversation to listen to the practitioners on the field. Really a pleasure being here.
Thank you.
Same. Thanks, guys. It was a great, actually, a learning session and a great discussion around the whole ecosystem.
Yeah,
Great.
from my
Thank
end,
you so much. Sure,
okay.
please proceed.
Yeah, no, please, Sakshi, you can finish it.
Okay. I would like to express my gratitude to the audience for their questions. And with this, we have come to the end of our webinar. Again, a big shout out to our attendees for extending their time and support for the event. And a special thanks to our esteemed speakers here today. We promise to be back soon with more exciting sessions. And don't forget to join us for EV Finance and Investment Summit 2024, which will take place in Delhi on January 19th. Thank you so much, everyone. The floor is now open for everyone. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Take care.
Thank you all.